I used to have panic attacks. Had a period where that was quite debilitating and didn't sleep for quite a long time, and so I understand. Early, I had a completely debilitating fear of public speaking where I just couldn't. Like, I would pass out if I tried. I only found one thing that actually really worked for panic attacks. And by worked, I mean actually changed the underlying reality fundamentally as opposed to managed it. I didn't find that CBT did, or DBT, or hitting pillows, or emotional release therapy, or Gestalt, or hypnotherapy. Like, those were all cool, but or breath work, or meditation, or... The only thing that I found worked was there are different ways of doing it, but there are ways that go into the panic attack as opposed to away from it. And so I'll explain the mechanism here briefly. A panic attack is different than just generalized anxiety, right? It's generalized anxiety that turns into a feedback loop. And so let's say that I'm anxious about some shit. Everybody's anxious, like that. Fear is a natural part of life, and we'll feel some adrenaline happen. And we know that that's because in evolutionary environments, the fear usually needed a physiologic response. So some adrenaline would come so I could run or fight or something. Now, most of the things I'm afraid of don't actually need adrenaline, because I'm not going to have a physical response to if the teacher likes my report, or if the person on the date wants to respond or not. And as a result, I don't use up that adrenaline. There isn't a kind of adaptation. It just feels shitty, right? And so maybe I'm in a situation where I have a relationship that's going bad and I'm not sure if it's going to work or not. And I'm not sure if they're being honest to me. And then finances are also tight, and then something else. And I start to have more base anxiety. So my base anxiety gets high enough. And then maybe at a certain point, something happens and my base anxiety is high enough that the sensation of it inside of me, the fluttering in my stomach, or the like hotness in my ears or in my face, all of a sudden is a sensation that I'm unfamiliar with, like it's at a higher level. And all of a sudden I get scared of that sensation, because I'm like, what's happening? Am I dying? What's like, am I going crazy? What the fuck's happening? Now, when I get afraid of my own experience of fear, now I'm in a feedback loop, because I'm not afraid of reality. I'm afraid of my own experience of fear. So my body produces adrenaline to the symptoms of adrenaline. And that tight feedback loop is a motherfucker, because sometimes it'll just produce adrenaline to the symptoms of adrenaline. So then the symptoms get worse. So then you get more scared, and it does that until you just run out of adrenaline and eventually pass out, or you go get a benzo or an alcohol or something. If I try to do breath work to calm it, which of course to some degree I can, because I can take breaths that stimulate my parasympathetic nervous system and are inverse to a sympathetic drive. And if I try to distract myself with bunny videos or whatever I would do to try to create a different response, I'm still affirming that I'm scared of that sensation, and that I don't want it to happen, and that if it comes, I'll be scared of it. So my sympathetic adrenal complex is still oriented to produce adrenaline to my symptoms of adrenaline. So I'm always scared of that thing happening. So there are processes where you get facilitated to go into the panic attack fully. And so you start to think about things you're anxious of, you start to feel the symptoms, and then you start to say, it's important to know that it can't kill you. Even if you feel like you can't breathe, at worst you pass out, the panic attack is gone, and your conscious mind isn't there, you start breathing again. So you know this is just sensations, and as uncomfortable as they are, they can't actually hurt me. They're just fucked up feeling, but sensations. And you're like, ultimately, I want to understand myself. I want to understand what's arising enough that I can actually be with myself and have more wholeness. So then you start to go into a process where you say, all right, and typically I would say this should be facilitated, and I can recommend processes that do that. So you go into a process where you're being facilitated to notice the symptoms, the rapid heart, the flushing face, And rather than want them to go away, welcome them. Say, I welcome all of this. I want to feel it. In fact, I want to feel the fullness of it. I want to understand all of it and be with all of it. So not only do I want to feel it, I want it to get as intense as it can. So you actually welcome it, to let the heart racing get more intense, the difficulty breathing getting more intense. And you can't say it while actually really wishing it goes away. You have to really lean in as an explorer, as a curious explorer, to be like, what is this? When that happens, there is a clear signal to your adrenals that you're not afraid of the thing you're leaning into, and it stops producing adrenaline in response to the symptoms of adrenaline. There is a kind of HPA axis neurological reset, psychological reset as well. And then once you've done that several times, you start to be like, actually, I'm not afraid of this thing. I can lean into it. I'm not going to die. I'm not going to go crazy. I can, and the feelings are actually whatever, right? They're not that terrible. And then the key becomes, well, you'll be afraid for it to come on at certain times. Like, I don't want it to come on when I'm having to give my talk or with my work or whatever it is. So then you actually have to welcome that it can come anytime, because otherwise the time that it isn't welcome is when you'll still be in that response. And be like, okay, if it comes at that time, I'll be with it. I'll go into it. I'll be with it, because what the fuck else am I going to do? Like, I don't really have much any other good choices. And this is the process of leaning in and actually befriending the fear. So fear stops being a self-reinforcing loop. Anyone who goes through that and actually goes through it will have both a level of compassion and humility, plus a level of strength that is not really available if people haven't gone through it.